Fasting sure has caught on, eh? Are you thinking about giving it a go, intermittent fasting or extended fasting? There are some side effects you need to know. It's not all glory and triumph, weight loss and fat loss. There are some side effects. So let me tell you what they are, the 5 most common, as well how to manage them and why they happen. Hey team, Mike here at After 40 Fitness. Another question came up regarding intermittent fasting, that there are some side effects that people are experiencing. And I thought, what a great topic. Let me spend a few minutes talking about the 5 most common side effects of intermittent fasting. Hey, I'll tell you why they happen, what's responsible for it, how best to manage them. And listen, if you hold on till after I'm done the 5, I'll even explain how to avoid them in the first place. So on that note, if you haven't yet, or if this is your first time to my channel, please do subscribe. Putting out at least 2 and probably 3 videos a week right now. Most are of a keto and low carb space, since that's my passion, but also health and wellness in general. Things like this, like intermittent fasting.
I'm dying to talk to you about this.
I eat for 8 hours and I fast for 16.
I can feel the difference.
So without any further ado, let's get into the 5 symptoms, the 5 side effects of intermittent fasting with number 1. And I kid you not, I know it's obvious, but let's focus for a couple minutes on hunger. And hunger does seem obvious, doesn't it? In fact, there's a lot of people who won't even start a fasting regimen just because they're afraid of being hungry. It sounds unpleasant to be hungry, and yet it doesn't have to happen. See, everything in our body is controlled by hormones. And hunger is one of those ones that has several hormones involved. You may have heard of these hormones like leptin and ghrelin, definitely insulin and glucagon. And so we have to worry about those if they're not in check. Man, you know what it's like when you smell something, when you see something, when you hear bacon sizzling. That causes a reaction in our body where digestive enzymes and juices and acids get released in anticipation. This phenomenon, just so you know, is called the cephalic response. Cephalic meaning mind, and it's a connection from our mind down into our digestive system. And so it's not just by sensory perception. You need to know this. This is a learned response. In fact, I'm going to show a clip here. I'm going to read it with you. This is from thefastingmethod.com, a great site that constantly looks at, in fact, I suggest you look it up, thefastingmethod.com, always talks about the science behind fasting, some really great ones. But this one here is great. The applicability of Psychology 101 to hunger is obvious. We can become hungry for many reasons. Some are natural, smell and sizzle of steak, and others have become conditioned. This is where we're going to spend the bulk of our day, is in condition. These conditioned responses can be powerful. They can cause great hunger. If we consistently eat breakfast, and I gave you the example, but here at 7, lunch at 12, and dinner at 6, then the time of day itself becomes a stimulus for eating. And even if we ate a big meal last night, at 7 a.m. we wouldn't normally be hungry. We may still have this cephalic response that causes a grumble in the belly, right? A little noise and a little bit of a hunger spasm or hunger pain at 7 a.m. only because 7 a.m. has become a stimulus for us. I like the second paragraph. Notice that if we start to pair the act of watching a movie with popcorn and sugary drinks, then the thought of a movie can trigger hunger. Isn't that amazing? Notice the movie is a conditioned stimulus for food companies. Oh my God, here's what we're up against. Food companies spend billions of dollars trying to increase the number of conditioned stimuli that will make us hungry. Okay, so that's the battle you and I have to face. It's remarkable. So what you need to be aware of is that cephalic response, it's short-lived. And this is the beauty. This is what you need to know. If you miss a meal, i.e. we're talking about, let's say, for example, we're talking about skipping breakfast, then what you need to know is your body still expects it, right? It's thinking at 7 a.m., if that's your time to eat, that you're going to eat. And it gets prepared. However, the best thing is that response is very short-lived. The body's not stupid, right? So if at 7 o'clock it releases a little bit of digestive juices and you get a little grumble, it knows in about 10 or 15 minutes that it's not getting food. I want to share with you a study now that I thought was so profound. And this one was on the cephalic response. Notice the cephalic phase insulin response. So we're going to talk in particular, not just about digestion, but one step further in that it's believed that taste, so while sight and sound and appearance of food can trigger digestion, there is this belief that the cephalic response can include the release of insulin to taste. Notice in this study, there were highlighted 64 overweight and obese. They had to, as you'll notice here, neither restrained eaters, so they ate whenever they wanted. They were on no diet program whatsoever. And they may have been insulin resistant. Well, they're all obese. So I think we can assume that insulin resistance is in place. So what they did was, just to give you some background, is they gave them sugar and or sucralose. in the mouth, swish it around for 15 seconds and spit it out. And they wanted to see if there was an insulin response from that. What they found was that about 40% of the participants, 40%, remember we're talking about obese, followers of a SAD diet, standard American diet full of carbs with insulin resistance, only 40%. So in the most compromised, call it cross-section of Canada and the US, okay, 40% had this response. Now, the purpose I bring that up is because what happened to the other 60%, right? Well, this is one of the things that came out of this lesson of this study was that it appears to be a learned response. Remember we talked about conditioned stimuli, how pairing movie with popcorn can make the movie now a stimulus for hunger. And same with times of the day. Well, it looks like these people have trained themselves just like that when something sweet hits your mouth, body, you can expect calories, right? Now, the best part was that of this group, remember 40%, in this most compromised cross-section of the US and Canada, 40%. But what I want to draw your attention to is that what they did in this study, which was so good, these authors were on point. These authors then introduced a 2-week training period where they said, I want you to understand what's happening here. Okay, you're training your body that when it tastes something sweet, that it should release insulin. So let's figure that out. Let's teach you about it. And I suspect they don't actually say what the training was, but you'll notice here that there was no CPIR, no cephalic phase insulin response after training. Okay, think about that. For the 40% who had a response in phase 1, 0 had a response in phase 2. So I just want to draw your attention to 2 things. A, it's a learned response, and B, it doesn't appear to be something, right? So learn meaning unlearn, unlearnable. But second, it doesn't appear to be something that affects low carbers or ketonians. And the reason for that is because, right, we've got a flat line glucose level. So I don't know what yours is. Mine is right around 70 milligrams per deciliter. 70 is my fasted level. So at 10 a.m., if I test with my Keto Mojo and I'm at about 70, and if I were to have an insulin shock, an insulin spike, what would happen to my 70? It would plummet. It would drive me into hypoglycemia. So what we know very quickly is as people adapt to the keto lifestyle and the low carb lifestyle, and their glucose levels out, the body can't afford for us to go hypoglycemic, and none of us have that happen. I don't know about you, but I can drink a Diet Coke, I can drink a sugar-free Monster, I can chew gum, and I don't go hypoglycemic. Right? So that tells me that we all, as a matter of, in the process of going low carb or keto, we fix this. We unlearn this CPIR effect if we had it, if we were part of the 40% in the first place. So a couple of tips dealing with getting back to hunger. How do we deal with the hunger? How do we manage it? Number 1, I think you'd agree, is take it slow. Take it slow. Don't start with a super long fast. Don't immediately decide to go into a 24-hour fast. Don't just arbitrarily decide to go from a standard American diet to taking Monday off. Okay, you're going to feel hunger pains throughout the entire day as you go through your normal times of normal meals, right? So don't start with a long fast. It might just be simplest to skip breakfast or even just push breakfast off. How about instead of having it at 7 a.m., you have it at 9? See if you can survive for 2 hours. And over the course of a week, push it out until breakfast becomes lunch. Now you have ostensibly fasted from dinner the night before until noon, when you call it lunch or breakfast, doesn't matter anymore, but you fasted now for 16 hours. How cool is that? Number 2 is don't be around food. All right, let's be honest. Our psyche is our worst enemy sometimes, and surrounding yourself with food, even with food images and smells, I mean, my God, the brain is powerful in that regard. And so we talked about stimuli. Believe me, the aroma of something fresh baked, it will burn you. Right? In fact, I want to illustrate that for you. Watch this video clip. See if this makes you hungry. So did you get hungry? I know I sure did. Comment in the comment section if you did. So just say hungry or not hungry. I'm really intrigued to see who didn't have some inspired hunger come from that little clip. Number 3 is avoid boredom. I mean, boredom in this when it comes to fasting, and this topic will kill you. It'll lead some people, honestly, to obsess about food. All they can do is think now about the food that they're going to have. It can cause some people to implode. Right? So boredom really is our little demon if you're fasting. A great way to avoid boredom, by the way, is to watch some videos. Remember I mentioned how these waves were only like 10 or 15 minutes long? Right? That's the cool part about the hormones that impact our hunger. They're very short-lived. Well, guess what? My videos average about 15 to 20 minutes. So go watch one or two of my videos and you'll be through the hunger and on to... Oh, that's gorgeous. What a great plan. Side effect number 2, we dealt with hunger. Now side effect number 2 is going to be some combination, hopefully you don't get this, but if you do, of fatigue, of brain fog, lightheadedness, lethargy, hunger, being hangry. I've grouped these together because they all have the same cause. In fact, there's actually 2 causes, so let's talk about them both. First is hypoglycemia. So I will tell you what the second one is. The second one is what's called not being truly fat adapted, but we'll get to that one in a second. So hypo, meaning low glucose levels, that's hypoglycemia. And remember, this makes sense because you will have low glucose levels when you're fasting. You're not taking in carbs. So this should be when your glucose is at its lowest homeostatic level. Why hypoglycemic, you ask? Well, remember I mentioned about that cephalic response. Okay, so when our body is ready for that morning bowl of cereal, and if you are one of the 40% who has a cephalic response, that may include a little jolt of insulin. So all of a sudden, if you were like me and you had a fasting glucose of 70 and the cephalic phase, and again, you're one of the 40, that little jolt may be enough to bring your blood glucose down to 55 or 60. And for some people, that's enough to notice. For some people who are susceptible to a small dip in glucose, that may affect their blood pressure, which brings on headaches. Lethargy, I experienced that. I actually, for a couple of days, I had to nap. It was remarkable. So gluconeogenesis does what it can very quickly to bring our glucose level back up. But for that short spell, that 10, 15, 20 minutes, people do experience those symptoms we talked about. And let this be a lesson as well. If you happen to be one of those people who's on meds, like insulin, like metformin, any of those that naturally bring down glucose levels, this is a topic you're going to want to bring up with your doctor. Again, being a personal trainer, fitness coach, a keto coach is one thing. I am not a doctor. And so if you're on meds, you make sure you talk to your doctor first and say, I'm going to try fasting. I'm going to try skipping breakfast and eating in a 6 or an 8 hour window. What do I need to know about my insulin, my metformin, etc.? Right? Great topic. Berberine is another one. You want to make sure you're aware of the impact of those meds if you're not taking in your normal carbs. The other reason that people get some of those aches and pains, some of the headaches and the lethargy, is because they're not what we call fat adapted. Have you heard that term before, fat adapted? This pertains particularly to those who are already low carb or those who are in ketosis, practicing a keto regimen, because we live in a space of burning fats for fuel, not carbs. The majority of people, let's face it, everyone in North America for that matter, for the last couple of generations, has predominantly been carb burners. And those who are low carb and those who are ketogenic are switching that on its head and becoming fat burners. But there's a bit of a transition phase. See, most people overnight, just so you know this, most people, including followers of a SAD diet, if their last meal is, let's say, 7 or 8 p.m., somewhere middle of the night, they've used up their available glucose. And from that point on, whether they know it or not, they're burning fat. They're burning fatty acids, which means that as a byproduct of using fat for fuel, they're producing ketones. Very many times a doctor will send someone for blood tests in the morning, and if they test for ketones, they'll test positive. Right? So that's interesting. So there is a level of flexibility in every one of us, and you and I inherently, that we can burn fat for fuel. We damn well better be able to burn fat for fuel at some point, right? And then these ketones are produced as a byproduct. What we never do if we're a standard American diet follower is give our body a chance to run primarily on those fatty acids and ketones, right? We get up in the morning and the first thing we do is have a carby, starchy, sugary breakfast. And then again at lunch, and then we have a mid-afternoon snack, and then we have dinner and probably an evening snack, all heavy in carbs. So we never get a chance to really truly be fat burners. And so our body has lost the ability to flip on a dime. Ketonians and low carbers have that back. We develop that, but it takes a bit of time to get that efficiency, that what's called metabolic flexibility, to be able to switch between energy sources on a dime. What you need to know is it comes back to the body very quickly. And I mean, most of the time it's a month or less, and you can be metabolically flexible again. However, patience is the play here, because for that month, especially for the first week, it's hard on our body to use fat only as a primary fuel source. What should you do if you experience these side effects? What if you experience the lethargy, the aches, body aches, if you will, some nausea, some headaches, some lightheadedness, if you will? Okay, you have a couple of choices. One is you could definitely break your fast early. All right, there's no prizes here for finishing on time. All right, you may just want to stop, get some food in you, and pick it up again tomorrow. I mean, just if you're one of those people that you find that if you don't eat by 8, then just take a week and stretch it out to 8:15 and then 8:30, and then maybe you can jump to 9 and then to 10. Take your time. There's no reason that everything has to be done today. Second is exercise. If you like to exercise in the morning, you may want a couple of days off, especially if it's intense. So a lot of people, when they decide it's time to get healthy, they want to fix their diet. They want to try fasting. They might want to try low carb or keto. They want to go to the gym and then do HIIT workouts and maybe try kickboxing all at the same time. Listen, take your time. Do one thing at a time. All right, let's take a week. Let's take a week and just focus on skipping breakfast, and we'll focus next week on adding exercise. All right, side effect number 3 could be a change in your bowel habits. All right, that's the best way to put it. And this happens anytime you change your diet, right? You must know this. Anytime you cut calories or change your staple in your diet, even when you travel. I don't know about you. When I travel overseas, or especially even just around Canada or the US, that often happens, right? And it can go either way. Oh my God, I don't know about you, but I can never foretell it's going to be constipation or diarrhea. So the cause for that is most often gut bacteria, right? And there's a second part to that, and that is the amount of food eaten, either more or less. So what you should investigate is the bacteria in our stomachs. The bacteria in our gut reacts differently to different types of food and to periods of no food. And the best way to deal with these changes, you can add fiber. That's a very popular one. I find the best thing for my clients is to up their electrolytes. So 2 in particular, I don't know if you know this or not, you should investigate this, that sodium and magnesium are the 2 that have the most profound impact of all the electrolytes and all the minerals on regulating our bowel movements. So if you're struggling, you can always go see your pharmacist or your physician, and they can prescribe you temporary meds to help you get over the hurdle. Or if you can afford a couple of days, up your sodium. I kid you not. I mean, we're so afraid of sodium nowadays, but especially if you're low carb or keto, I have all my clients on a couple of teaspoons a day of straight, like regimen red salt or Himalayan salt or Celtic salt. In the absence of any other choice, believe me, table salt is fine. If it's still happening, see a pharmacist, see your family physician. I just know what works, and it tends to be upping your electrolytes. All right, side effect number 4 is heartburn. Could also be called GERD. It's also been known as acid reflux. So you know how we talked about that cephalic phase? It's coming back again. So the cephalic phase, you remember, if you're used to eating, if you smell food or see food or hear food, bacon sizzling, that because that causes that startup, right? That little pick-me-up in your digestive system, guess what happens? We talked about it. It's acid in the stomach. And so again, cephalic phase responses can mean that indigestion and heartburn are going to happen. By the way, coffee is also said to contribute to acid reflux. So thank God not for me. Okay, I'm just so happy about that. But some have reported that black coffee on an empty stomach can give them GERD. I hope that's not you. If it is, you might have to avoid that for a while until you kill the cephalic phase response in yourself, and you can give it a couple of weeks and try again. The other option is apple cider vinegar and pickle juice. Apple cider vinegar in particular, of the 2, because of the acid level in it, I kid you not, you should try this. It seems counterintuitive, right? People are popping Tums and Rolaids, and yet apple cider vinegar is, because of the acidity of it, calms our stomach. You should try it. Look this up first, apple cider vinegar for GERD or acid reflux or indigestion. You'd be amazed. But again, if those don't work, then by all means, see your pharmacist. And lastly, the number 5 I'm going to deal with is feeling cold. All right. I don't have this either, but I do hear a lot of reports of people saying that it seems to be hit and miss, that they're cold when they're fasting. So the theory, if you will, is that it's our metabolism slowing down. And everyone's afraid of that, aren't we? We don't expect that. Well, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that's not it. Now, until you become fat adapted and this sensation normalizes, you may just have to bundle up if you're cold. So how do you avoid any or all of these side effects, as I mentioned in the beginning? I'm going to give you 3 tips. Number 1, eat better. Get nourished. I mean, if you eat lousy, if you eat a lot of carbs, if you eat a lot of junk food, a lot of takeout, a lot of processed food, focus on whole, nutritious foods for a while before you even talk about taking on fasting. Okay? Help fix your hormonal imbalances, get them back in check, and whole, good food does that. Number 2, start exercising ahead of time. Don't wait until you're fasting. They don't have to go through that whole sore body experience along with trying to fend off hunger and hanger, right? Try to do one ahead of time, not all at the same time. But third, the real key is going low carb. Whether it's keto or not, go low carb. Get your body first away from carbs and sugar and white flour and white sugar and get it more on the fatty acid side of the equation, using the resulting ketones, if you do manage to get into ketosis, as energy as well. Being in ketosis, just so you know, shares a lot of similarities with fasting. Right? They have a lot of similarities in that they'll both result in low homeostatic glucose levels. They'll drop your blood glucose levels. Going high carb directly into fasting is doable. Believe me, many people do around the world for religious reasons. They don't even know what ketosis is. But listen, if it can be done easier, why wouldn't you do that? So that is the key, is going low carb, and preferably, since it's my passion, I'm very much in favor of going keto. So what will happen is you'll have low insulin levels, low glucose levels, high glucagon levels. You'll also get the leptin and ghrelin hormones. So ghrelin being the hunger hormone, leptin being the satiety hormone. Those come in check, right? So you get those back into balance. And you'll have trained yourself, here's the key, you'll have trained yourself away from that cephalic phase response. Okay, both the digestive one and the insulin one, those are gone. Right? You can teach yourself away from those so that should you decide to fast, you don't have any of those side effects. And then about a month, maybe 4 to 6 weeks after you've gone at least low carb, but preferably keto, and you've trained yourself away from those cephalic side effects and your hormones are in check, you'll reach this like nirvana that I talked about called fat adapted. Being fat adapted is the name of the game. Now you're super efficient as a fat burner. You can burn ketones as a byproduct of, right? They're a byproduct of burning fatty acids, and now you can use them for fuel as well. So now you can take on this fasting methodology and it'll be a cakewalk. Okay. In fact, since you're no longer a slave to hunger, many people, myself included, all my clients claim that, man, fasting just became natural, that they don't suffer with hunger anymore. They've got this stable energy matrix that supplies them throughout the day in the absence of hunger, and fasting almost becomes simple. In some cases, they just forget to eat. How much cooler would that approach be? On that note, folks, thank you so much for your time. I hope you gleaned a few things you can apply to your journey. Looking forward to seeing you in the next one.